Hi students, and welcome to Preliminary Chemistry video series on the chemical earth. In the last video we started to look at some of the rules around nomenclature of inorganic salts, and in this video we're going to move to the organic compounds. Now when we're looking at naming organic compounds, this could be a series of a very long number of videos. And we don't want to go into all the rules around all the different types of organics. So we're just going to have a look at some of the basic ones now, and we'll revisit these later on when we look at the energy topic. So the first important thing we need to do is we need to recognize what the difference between inorganic salts and organic compounds are. So organic compounds are covalent compounds. You'll hopefully remember that inorganic salts are inorganic salts are ionic compounds. So these ones are covalent, and they are primarily composed of carbon and hydrogen, and then there usually are also trace amounts of oxygen, nitrogen, and perhaps other things like phosphorus and sulfur and so on. Organic compounds can be split into different groups based on similarities between the different members of each of those groups. And some of those characteristics are based on the number of bonds that exist between carbons, adjacent carbons, and sometimes they are based on whether there is a hydrogen or a hydroxy or some other group that's coming off the side of one of those carbons. So there's a couple of important rules to be aware of. Firstly is the rule around the number of carbon atoms in the longest chain. So when you are looking at a chain of carbons, and if we have just one of the basic organic compounds, which would be this one with lots and lots of hydrogens in it, the first thing that we need to do is we need to look at what is the longest chain of carbons. And this is a straight chain, so it's a nice easy one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons all together. Now if there's 1 carbon, it's meth. If there's 2, it's eth. If there's 3, it's prop. If there's 4, it's bute. And then after that, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. Pent is 5 carbons, and the one that I've drawn below would be hex. So the hex part of the name is the prefix. It's the first part that tells you that there are 6 carbons. The second part of the name usually comes from the nature of the bonding between the carbons and any other groups that might be attached other than hydrogen to the main carbon atoms in the chain. So the first thing we need to do is look for whether we have single, double, or triple bonds. So in the example on the previous slide, and I won't draw all the hydrogens in, I'll just basically draw it like this and let you sort of identify that what is here is hydrogens. But remember, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. That meant it was hex. And because each of these is a single bond, there are no double bonds or triple bonds in the structure, then it's an alkane. And so that end part of the name is what we add, and so this compound would be called hexane. If the front of it had 2, then we would refer to it as an ene. And if there were 3 bonds between carbons, then it becomes an ine. So whether it's ethene or ethine, propene or propine, and so on, is going to depend on 2 things. 1, the number of bonds between the carbons, and 2, the number of carbons in the longest chain. So you can see here's some examples. They've actually been drawn with their atomic structure, so you can see where the electrons are being shared. But you can also notice that this is going to be a carbon with 4 hydrogens. And because there's only 1 carbon, and because there's obviously going to be no double bonds or triple bonds, this one is methane. In the second, we have 2. So if we replace one of these end hydrogens with a carbon, and then again we add hydrogens here, here, and here, then we end up with this structure on the end, and this has 2 carbons and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hydrogens, but because we have 2 carbons and just a single bond, this is going to be eth2-ane. Ethane. So here's how you sort of see how this sequence can quite easily build. So 1 carbon is methane, 2 carbons is ethane, 3 carbons propane, and 4 carbons butane. Now we'll have a look at these in a little bit more detail later on. Methane is what we use to light our Bunsen burners. These two are components of LPG most oftenly, and this one's the gas, the fuel that's in cigarette lighters. We can go through the same sort of an exercise with the alkenes as well, but I won't spend too much time doing this now because we will go through nomenclature of organic compounds at a later stage. But you can see in this example, there's a double bond between the 2 carbons, and there are just 2 carbons, so 2 is eth, but this time, because of the double bond, it's ethene, not ethane. And in this case, 1, 2, 3 carbons mean it's prop, and because there is a double bond there, it's going to be propene. So that gives us just a little bit of an idea of how we can name these organic compounds. Thanks for watching.